I mean, almost every tradition, every culture has a sort of a breathing practice. And so if there's one that like really resonates with you, it's sort of is seeming that from the research, it's like uh, have one that works for you and do it. I think everybody's going to be comparing breathing practices and trying to find the optimal one. They're all going to have benefits. So until we get to that point, or I also think that you can use your own body as the antenna, as the monitor of which practice is best for you. Right. So you do a couple practices and you just see which one resonates with you. That's what I recommend. The other thing is, I really like a bit of the ujjayi, which is, I think some people kind of call it the Darth Vader breath, where it almost feels like you're closing off your vocal cords in the back, and you're kind of, it's like you're breathing like Darth Vader does. That's, you know, if you were to take like a big straw, like a huge straw, right, and try to drink, like you're going to get a lot of stuff in. If you take a smaller straw and compress it, right, then there's going to be less of a flow going through. The velocity might be faster, but the flow, the amount might be less. And that's kind of what you're doing, is by closing off. You're sort of closing off the back of your, sort of like you're closing off the back of your oral pharynx back there, and you're breathing with your nose, and you're closing off the space that the air goes through. And in doing so, what you're going to do naturally is you're actually going to increase the length of time that it's going to take you to take an in breath or an exhale. So if I didn't close it off, for instance, this would be my if I do close it off, it's so it's probably about 2 to 3 times longer, right? And I wasn't like trying to extend it or anything like that. It just happens. I really like the, inhale. Like my thing is, extend the exhale. And when I extend the exhale, I don't really want to think about it. So I breathe in normally, and then I do the ujjayi out breath through my nose, still through my nose. So it's kind of like, another way I describe it, and this might be kind of weird. Maybe it's because I have 3 kids, and I've used their breathing quite often in examples. When you're trying to when I'm trying to put somebody to sleep, and you're sort of rocking them a little bit, and you can sense that they're starting to relax, but you can also tell that their nervous system is kind of like at that stage where the nervous system could go either way. Like they could act like something could happen and they could wake up and they're up, and you're like, this like cannot happen right now. Like I need this kid to take a nap, or, to go to bed. And so you're doing like everything that is soothing. You're rocking them, maybe you're singing a little lullaby. What I do is I actually breathe more heavily but slower. It's almost as if I'm using my breath to guide their breath. So if they're hearing anything, what they're hearing is they're hearing my breath, and my breath is slowing their nervous system down. So I'll actually do that type of breathing when I'm putting my child to sleep, because I'm modeling what their breathing should be as they're falling asleep. So it's like or some sense of, like some rhythmic noise that is being created, and you're creating with your own breath. And when you do it, there's a sound, right? You can hear it. You can hear it because there's actually, I am closing off my vocal cord, but internally, there's a sound that I'm hearing on the inside of my ear. It's almost like it's coming up through my eustachian tube and it's resonating my ears. You can actually do this. It's a really neat practice. I think you can do this in like the ocean or a pool or a bathtub, where you put your ears underwater and you keep your mouth and nose above water, and you do this breath, and then you can actually, the water accentuates it a little bit, and so you can actually, you can amplify it and see what it does to your system. Right? With my kids, for instance, it works. It's sort of like it's helping to shift their nerve. It's almost like, I really use it when they're right at that precipice of, I could fall asleep, or I could wake up right now and, have a party with you. I'm like, no, we're not partying. It's not time to party. And so that, you kind of have to throw in all your tricks. It's a good one. And then I feel more relaxed, and they're probably then resonating with my nervous system. As I'm feeling more relaxed, they're feeling that as well. My tension is decreasing, et cetera, et cetera. And then they fall asleep. So, see what you're doing. If you're a body worker, see what sort of breathing you have when you're like in the deepest part of the session. What kind of breathing are you doing? Right? And bring your awareness to that and be like, oh, wow, I feel like I'm not breathing at all, but I'm not holding my breath. I bet you're not holding your breath. You are, there's a pause. There might be a pause somewhere. Or you might actually be making a sound of breathing, doing this with your client, like you're holding and you're breathing in a certain way to model maybe how your client would be breathing, or just using the sound of that. And what it sounds like to me, and I might be crazy, is it actually sounds like waves crashing on the beach when you do it. It's like the inhale is like the water going out, and then the exhale is the inhale is the water going out, like, and then so how you can create the ocean in your own ears with the sound of your breathing. Okay. The next part that I wanted to, so part of mindfulness is, being aware. When you practice mindfulness, one of the first things that happens is that I think you start becoming aware of the nature of your mind. And many people, we've talked about this in the past, of like the monkey mind. Like, you recognize really how everywhere your mind is. And when you start paying attention to the present moment, you start recognizing how you don't know how to pay attention to the present moment, and how your mind goes everywhere, and how there's 1,000 thoughts and 1,000 emotions and 1,000 sensations that are sort of bombarding you at any moment. And a lot of people actually get stressed when they start practicing mindfulness, because they're like, oh my goodness, like, there's so much going on in my mind. How can I even practice this? How can I rest my mind to even do any of this? And so we use the anchor initially, and we say, okay, we're not just paying attention to nothing. We are paying attention to an anchor. You're choosing what you're paying attention to. And one of the things that might come up for you that comes up for everybody are obvious distractions, distractions that arise in your own practice. And these can be anything from subtle distractions to more gross distractions, like bigger distractions. Typically, with the subtle distractions, we're better at handling subtle distractions. Okay. A subtle distraction might be something like you have a little itch on the side of your neck. You just itch it, goes away. You notice it, itch it, goes away, come back. Right. There might be a slight moment where you're still paying attention to your anchor. You itch, and then you barely, your attention barely came away from your anchor. Right. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think that this is actually really good to be aware of and to notice in yourself. What are the subtle distractions and what are the bigger distractions that come into your practice? And is there a theme? Do these distractions kind of, do they come up more frequently than not? What is the energy? What is the energy of a subtle distraction, or what is the energy of a bigger distraction? And how do you respond to it? Right? Responding to it, usually a bigger distraction that comes in takes more of our attention. It might even take all of our attention. Okay. And the subtler distractions don't take so much of our attention. All right. So essentially, when you're in the practice, distractions are going to come up. They're going to emerge. Some are more subtle, some are bigger. Right. And for us to start, even to bring awareness to what type of distraction came in, what was the source of it, and to pay attention then to how big of a distraction does it become based on how much of our attention actually has to go or goes to that distraction. Okay. And this is something that can be really, really powerful, because it's almost as if, right, with subtle distractions, you can have a subtle distraction. A subtle distraction comes in. It doesn't take you off your anchor. It doesn't take you off your center. It sort of comes in. You can see it. It's in that periphery. It's almost kind of like in the peripheral awareness. But you're still with your anchor. It hasn't completely taken you away. It hasn't completely removed you from your anchor. Okay. It's over there. You notice it, but you're still focusing on your breath. You're still focusing on your feet on the ground. You're still focusing on the emotion in your heart or whatever you're using as your anchor. And as we continue to be with our anchor, we simply notice that the subtle distraction may stay, it may leave, but we're not going there with our full attention. With a bigger or more of a gross distraction, our attention completely goes to it and we lose our anchor. And these are really good things to be aware of, because when you notice that a bigger distraction is coming on, when you notice that there is a gross distraction that is coming in, that's actually when there's more energy that's associated with you staying with your anchor. Right? It's almost as if you feel like there is a pull in one direction, right? There's a pull in one direction. You're like, oh, this is really strong, right? And with your attention, you're able to actually stay with your anchor because you increase the power of your attention more towards your anchor, knowing that there's this pull going, right? Now, Do we get pulled away? Absolutely. It's going to happen, right? You're going to be like, ugh, that is such a strong distraction. My goodness. Such a strong, potent energy. It just took me, despite me trying to put all my attention into my anchor. Like literally, it's like if it was a flashlight, if my attention was like a flashlight, I just increased the lumens by 10 billion lumens on this thing, and I'm trying to go to my attention, and this thing is still taking me away. Right? It's still grabbing it all and it's pulling. It's like pulling the light rays over to it, and I'm like, all right, there it is. Okay, now come back. Right? Um, if you've ever been river rafting, like in a class 4 or 5 rapid, for instance, these are the times where like your guide may be like, okay, there's a really big, large vortex or whirlpool on the right. We want to really stay away from that. Otherwise, the entire boat is going to go under, and it might take you a few minutes to get up to the top because the vortex or whirlpool is so strong, it's going to pull you down. You're like, that sounds absolutely horrible. All I want to do is stay out of that vortex or whirlpool over there, right? And as you get closer to it, you see the swirling, and it looks like, like the worst possible whirlpool, the vortex in the ocean. You're like, oh my goodness, like that looks like a black hole. Everything is going to disappear in that. We have to stay away from it. Right. And so what you're doing is you're then paddling as hard as you can to try to stay away from it, but everything is pulling into it, and you're paddling harder, and it's pulling and it's paddling and it's pulling and it's paddling and pulling. And do some boats get caught? Yep, they do. Right. But is there that moment where it's like you're paddling, it's pulling, you're paddling, it's pulling, you're paddling, it's pulling, you're paddling harder, harder, and then you're like, yes, we did it, woo! This is what happens in my brain. All right, so I'm just sharing this. I'm sharing this with you. Have I been in the I have been in the whirlpool. I have been in the whirlpool. I have been in the whirlpool, both physically and mentally. All right. And what's interesting, okay, is when you are in that physical whirlpool, you know what the recommendation is? Our instinct, as we're getting pulled, as we're getting sucked down, trust me, this happened to me. I have a visceral felt sense of it. Our instinct when we're getting sucked down one of these whirlpools is to swim. Right? That's our instinct. I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. I gotta get, as you're feeling yourself going lower and lower and lower, and you're like, there's gotta be some bottom where I can then spring up, and there's no bottom. You're like, right? And so what am I doing? I'm struggling. Okay. And then this wise word came from, thank God, the guide, right? This happened 2 hours prior, right? But this can also happen in a meditation where the guide said, if you get caught in one of these whirlpools, what you need to do is you don't panic. Thanks. You don't swim. You actually, because you have a life vest on, you curl up in a little ball and you relax. You curl up, you grab the top of your life vest and you just curl up in a little ball. And what happens is when you curl up in a little ball, because you have the life vest, the whirlpool spits you out. Right? So instead of trying to fight it, for instance, curl up in a little ball. I got spit out, and lo and behold, I started seeing the light. Before we get into the whirlpool, right? So that's an interesting analogy when we are in the whirlpool, right? It's like, well, here I am. Before we get into the whirlpool, though, that energy is pulling really powerfully, really strong. That's a really strong distraction that we all have. We all have these really, really, really powerful distractions that come in and take us away from the present moment and grab our attention and hold it, right? And then that can create an entire story and creates an identity and things like that. And we don't even recognize that we're being pulled. We don't even recognize that this is just taking our attention and we're completely not in the present moment. And this is not where I chose to put my attention, but it's gone. Right? When that pull is happening and you're noticing, right? That's when the power of mindfulness, almost, it's kind of like we need to turn up the volume on the power of mindfulness and put more energy and more attention into directing our attention towards the present moment, towards the direction that we wish to pay attention to. All right. Almost as if you're paddling really hard and the whirlpool is pulling and you're paddling really hard and then you break through and you're in the clear. You're like, yes. Is another whirlpool going to show up? Absolutely. Right. And so, what can this look like? Well, first of all, it does involve, having a strong anchor that you can go to, having a strong resource. If it's your breath, if it's a mantra, if it's a word, if it's a prayer, if it's a felt sense, if it's a rock that you're holding on to, whatever it is, that there's an added element of energy that you're putting towards that anchor. All right. When we notice that those big distractions come up, you might be holding the rock tighter. You might be squeezing it more. You might be directing your attention as if we could modulate our attention, which we can. Right? It's almost as if your spotlight, the beam of your light increases towards your anchor. Like if you use a prayer or a word or a mantra, that you might repeat it faster, stronger, louder, and that's in the moment. Right? It's actually in the moment. If you have whatever mantra or word or phrase that you use, it becomes stronger, 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 stronger. It's almost like you're amplifying the level of that anchor to keep your attention on the course, on the path that it's going, and directing it. Now, the other part of this is recognizing what these distractions are, right? Because if these distractions keep on coming up, keep on appearing, especially the strong ones, maybe that then needs to be looked at. Okay, maybe we actually do need to turn our attention to these distractions that keep on creeping up. And asking ourselves and being curious of it, and maybe doing a practice such as the rain practice, right? Recognize the distraction. What is this distraction? Wow, this is a really strong distraction. But we do that with consciousness. We do that in the present moment. That we say, okay, this is my practice today. I'm going to focus on my breath. And in this practice, these distractions come up. Great. The subtle distractions we're good with. I want to eat lunch. I'm getting hungry, right? I want that bag of chips, whatever. Some subtle distraction, no, not too concerning. Some of the bigger distractions, maybe they actually are appearing day and day in, day out, right? They just keep on appearing. And you're like, this distraction keeps on appearing. Maybe I do need to actually look at it. Maybe I do need to actually investigate this, whatever that distraction is. Okay. If there's a worry or concern that keeps arising, if there's a felt sense of a loved one that keeps coming up, maybe that needs to be looked at. Maybe that's something that is unresolved or whatever, right? And so then we can bring in some of our meditative practices like rain, right? Recognize, accept, allow the body sensation that is present in you, investigate it as a felt sense in the body and nurture, All right. Maybe we do something like the emotional freedom technique, or tapping, or we go into a ceremony in regards to that. Whatever it is, right? But noticing it, right? Because some of those distractions, it's sort of like, oh, that distraction keeps on coming up. Maybe I need to look at this consciously. But then it becomes a conscious investigation, not I'm doing my practice and this keeps on coming up and I'm being distracted from my practice when this comes up. I'm doing my practice. I'm going to continue doing my practice. If these distractions keep coming up, what I'm going to start doing is I'm just going to jot down the types of distractions that I'm having, right? A lot of the times the distractions might be things like planning your day. Okay, fine. Semi-simple, I think, to kind of recognize that, all right, I like to plan my day. Even in the morning, I can let that be, right? And maybe look at my OCD in terms of needing to have my day completely planned. Maybe that's something that I need to look at a little bit closer. Okay. If the distractions keep coming up they keep on repeating and showing themselves, right? I actually think that you should look into that. Look into that distraction, right? If there's a worry about your child, or there's a concern about your loved one or something like that, bring it to awareness, bring it to consciousness, rise it up. If you feel comfortable doing so, right? You can do so in a meditation, or if you need a counselor, therapist, to talk to, then you do. But if it keeps on coming up, then maybe it needs to actually be looked at more closely as a distraction that keeps coming up. And notice that as you bring these distractions consciously, right, you sort of notice, hey, this distraction has been coming up. Tomorrow, maybe I can do a meditation around this distraction. And that then becomes your practice. I'm going to go into this, if you can, right? If you feel comfortable doing them, if it's not going to cause, significant PTSD or anything like that. If it does, then maybe you might need the help of a counselor or a psychologist or a therapist to help process whatever is coming up, or whatever process any distractions that are emerging in the practice of mindfulness. Okay. Use the distractions as be aware of them. Oh, this distraction is coming up. Recognize them if they're subtle distractions, or if they're more large, gross distractions, okay, that really take your attention, and start to recognize, is there a theme between the distractions that really take your energy away, that really take your attention away? And what are those distractions for you? When you're practicing mindfulness and you say, look, for these next 10 minutes, I'm going to really practice being in the present moment, and any distraction that comes up, I'm going to be aware of it, but I'm going to try not to pay attention to it. And I'm going to pay attention to my anchor, right? And see how you can do in that practice. Now, if the distraction is so strong that, for instance, you need to call your loved one or something like that because the phone keeps ringing and it's the same person, they're trying to get in touch with you, and they've just called the phone 10 times, for instance, then maybe you need to put your practice down and go answer the phone and say, what is it? Hello? How can I help you? What can I do? What do you need me for? Okay, so with that, what our practice is going to be is we're going to focus on an anchor today and almost pay attention to our distractions and recognize them as subtle or non-subtle. All right. The non-subtle distractions are they're the bigger distractions that take us away. Right. And even start to form a list, like a list. What are the stronger distractions that take me away? Right? And see, is there a pattern in that? And if there is, right, recognizing that, and then does that become a focus of our meditation in the future? If it's not, or even if it is, and it's sort of like, look, I've done a lot of meditating. Maybe it's my, maybe it's my health, or maybe it's my significant other or something like that. I've done a lot of meditation around this. I've done a lot of ceremony around this, and I'm still concerned about my health. Then one of the things that we can do is we can recognize when that distraction arises, we group it into the distractions of, oh, this is a distraction of health again. Look how strong this distraction is for me. But we're aware of it as almost like, oh, this is a theme for me that comes up. My health, or money, or kids, or loved ones, or something like that. Right? All right, so let's go into our practice. Okay, so let's find a comfortable posture. A posture you feel relaxed yet alert. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable closing your eyes. If not, having a soft downward gaze. As you're looking off on the horizon, the setting sun, the rising moon, over a field of flowers. And taking 2 or 3 deep breaths and bringing yourself as best you can with each in-breath to the present moment. And with each exhale, releasing any stress or tension you may feel in your body. Even if it's just the intention of releasing the tension. And bringing your attention to your anchor, to your resource. A place that you can direct your attention to, that you feel safer. This can be a word, a sound, phrase, a felt sense in the body. The sensation of you breathing. This can be pure awareness. Whatever works for you as a resource, as an anchor, that as your mind wanders, you can come back to over and over and over again. And just recognizing as you're in this practice, you're choosing where to pay your attention. You're choosing where to pay attention. That distractions will come in. There will be subtle distractions. That don't really affect your attention so much, that you can keep your attention on your anchor and just simply noticing them on your periphery. They don't have too much energy associated with them. And staying with our anchor or resource the best we can. And then there are bigger distractions. The ones that we notice completely pull our attention away from our anchor, from our resource. And you can recognize what types of distractions are these bigger distractions that come in. Simply notice them. What is this distraction? And if you wish, choosing to come back to this later or tomorrow in your practice. But for now, seeing, can you stay with your anchor or resource? Can you keep the spotlight of your attention on the object you are choosing to pay attention to? And you may feel these strong distractions coming in. See if you notice the energy associated with them. And in order to keep steady on your anchor or resource, you may actually need to turn up the energy of your own attention. Almost as if your searchlight could get brighter, stronger, fiercer. Staying with your resource, with your anchor. Sometimes needing to double, triple, quadruple the amount of energy in your conscious attention than the energy that is being used by the distraction to try to pull you away. Notice what happens in your body as a felt sense. And even if a distraction is strong enough that pulls our attention completely away, there's no judgment. There's no good or bad. Simply be aware of it. Know that that happened. Know that your attention got pulled. And see if you can come back to your anchor, your resource. If the anchor and resource are strong, we stay with it as best we can. We may even need to change our anchor or resource. We may even use multiple anchors or resources. Directing our attention consciously. If the distraction is strong and it keeps pulling us away from the present moment, we may even choose to investigate the distraction. If you wish and you feel resourced enough, to recognize it. Recognize what the felt sense is of this distraction in your body. Can you allow and accept the felt sense as it's appearing now? Investigate the felt sense. Is it static? Does it change or morph? Can you draw a border around it? Be curious about it. And then send yourself some nurturing, some self-love, self-compassion. Imagining your breath soothing this distraction, this energy, the felt sense of it in your body. Imagine a bright light filling it with what it needs, sending it love. Placing your hands on the felt sense in your body and sending warmth, light, love through your hands. Whatever way you know to send yourself nurturing love. And seeing, can you come back to your anchor? Can you come back to your resource? And just noting where your attention is now. taking 2 or 3 deep breaths, feeling your feet on the floor, your hands in your lap, your thighs being supported by whatever surface they're on, your whole body breathing. Opening your eyes if your eyes were closed, visually reorienting yourself to your room and surroundings, stretching or moving if you need to stretch, and just reflect on your practice today.